Now,
Yeah.
the night Donald Trump won, it reached 75. So basically, the night he won, it already reached a new all-time high. And then, some people on my show were saying, well, that's a contrarian play. Markets priced in a new high. It's time to, people bought the rumor. Now it's time to sell the news. Well, no one's been selling the news because now it's at 80,000. So let's take a look at the charts.
Bitcoin Zella stands out with its simplicity and clarity. We've crafted an experience that anyone can dive into, whether you're a crypto expert or just a new to the crypto world. Now, guess who keeps his eye on us? The author of best-selling book Rich Dad Poor Dad, Robert Kiyosaki. And we want to take this opportunity and thank all the people who trusted us, and we read every comment. And the best part, it's free. Subscribing now means you will get all new information for free. Don't just follow the trends, stay ahead of them. Subscribe to Bitcoin Zella today and enjoy the new edge. In this video, let's discuss these topics and more.
Yeah, so the first thing is the last time we talked about this, I talked about being slightly bullish on Bitcoin because this pattern where you ran up to all-time highs in March, this was all bullish consolidation within a parallel channel. And you can see that once we broke out, look at this. This is the amazing stuff about charts. You broke out, you retraced to the level, which was now support, and then it's just gone up from there. And so, listen, I'm not going to say that I'm uber bullish for 100K or 120K here, because I do think the biggest thing to recognize is that risk assets, it means that Bitcoin generally will trade with the stock market. So as long as the stock market's going up, Bitcoin likely goes up with it. But once we see that correction in the stock market or a pullback in the stock market, Bitcoin likely comes back in. I would still overall buy pullbacks on Bitcoin, especially with, the crypto administration that Trump is. He's going to have RFK in the mix in there, lots of pro-crypto stuff. But I, again, wouldn't say necessarily buy Bitcoin at 84,000 today. I think that's a little extended. I think you probably get a pullback to maybe the 74,000 range, and that's where you start to buy.
If we were to just remove these trend lines you drew and then maybe start from the summer lows and draw these trend lines, because I see the trend has been moving upwards since. Does that still make sense? Is it still trading within a reasonable band if you make that a bullish band?
Yeah. So one thing, and you bring up such a great point. I swear you're going to be a chartist in no time here. But look at these little pivots right along here, right? So where you just kind of tag these levels. And so my job as a technician of the charts is to essentially dictate where Bitcoin could pull back. And what we see is Bitcoin, this was support, broke down, resistance, support. So what does that mean? It means that if Bitcoin gets up to this level, this may be the level where there's some profit taking, and that's right around 86,000. So I would be starting to look for a pullback off 86,000, maybe back to 74, and then maybe at that point to move up to 100,000. That's all assuming, and I want to be clear on this, that the stock market is still staying strong during this period.
Yeah, that sounds a lot like your S&P forecast. A little bit more room on the upside, 6,100 points on the S&P, and then a slight pullback. But here for Bitcoin, you've added a disclaimer that suppose stock markets remain strong, we could still see $100,000.
Yeah, and keep in mind, we're seeing, one of the interesting things with this latest run in Bitcoin, right? So if we look at Bitcoin's run from last week, from the elections, look at the Russell, right? So the Russell 2000, look at this run here in the Russell. It's almost identical. And one of the comparisons is you could make a case, even though the market cap of Bitcoin is $2+ trillion, nearing $3 trillion, it's still treated like a heavy risk asset, right? It moves with the small and the mid caps. And so I would say that, again, more than anything, follow the Russell. And the Russell, interestingly enough, is also approaching a double top up here on the charts. And so that could be also a little bit like 2,000 more on Bitcoin. Maybe the Russell pushes up into this level, and then you get that pullback. And what you'll notice, and you're bringing this up, on purpose, I'm sure, is that in general, these assets will top out together in the short term. Now, I'm still a big believer that eventually Bitcoin is the digital gold. It's just not mature enough yet for that.
We spoke a couple of times since the beginning of summer, and back in July, I'm just pulling up our July 26 interview, you were calling for Bitcoin to have a big up move.
The cryptocurrency market has reached a record $3.12 trillion valuation, nearing France's GDP and positioning itself as the 8th largest economy if viewed as a country. Bitcoin leads the surge, edging close to the $90,000 price mark. Robert Kiyosaki, author of Rich Dad Poor Dad, advises caution to Bitcoin investors, urging them to avoid excessive greed. He plans to stop buying Bitcoin if it surpasses $100,000, despite previous bullish predictions.
So if we just draw out what has happened here on the chart, we had a big move up, and then essentially what you get is this sideways chop of digestion. And usually what it forms is this kind of parallel channel, which is exactly what Bitcoin is doing here. And then eventually you likely will break to the upside. So if we look at this, the eventual move should be up. And this is exactly what we're seeing here in the Bitcoin chart. If we draw our trend lines in here, it looks very similar to what we're seeing here. Big up move and then sideways consolidation. So really, if you look at this on a big time frame, this is actually bullish consolidation on Bitcoin. And I would fully expect it to make a move to the upside maybe in the next couple months.
Back then, it was still trading around $76,000. Yeah, 76. And you were right in your medium-term outlook, although at the time you were still kind of reserved. Like you were saying, well, it has a big up move from the technical charts, but I would start taking profits at certain levels, right?
Yeah.
So I wonder if that reservation is still there for you.
Yeah. And then you said 76. You probably meant 56,000 on Bitcoin during July, right? Because it never was quite at 70.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's what I meant. Yeah, 56,
no
56
worries,
July, and then 67. 67 was when we spoke. Yeah. Yeah, my mistake.
Yeah, exactly.
I misspoke.
So, and I think that's the kicker is that, for me, I'm a shorter term investor and trader. So, you see a 20% pop on Bitcoin. I'm taking some off the table. You can let the rest run with a trailing stop, something like that. But overall, the pattern was just sideways to slightly lower chop from that high in March of 2024. And that, again, in technical analysis, that's known as a bullish consolidation pattern, which, again, you have to favor that upside. And then you just throw the ancillary, deficit, all these other things, and you can understand why eventually Bitcoin would break out here. The question is, again, how high does it go, and do risk assets remain strong enough to keep it going?
So any downside for Bitcoin now? Are you factoring any bearish news or events that could push Bitcoin down to below, let's say, 50,000 or any what's the floor for Bitcoin for you?
So the first floor, and I'm gonna take it in stages. We have a multi-floor apartment building here, but basically once you break out above that high here, all right, this is that March high. This now becomes support, right? So on any sort of retrace, if it gets here, as long as it holds here, you remain bullish, right? So you remain bullish, like, okay, it hits here. Let's see how high it goes. If it ever gets below this 74, essentially, and confirms, that's where you have to start getting a little bit concerned, right? So you use it as the chart as a floor, the trend line here, which marked the previous. And you can even see, here was your high in March. Look at how it hit, was initially rejected, and then broke out. This will now be support. If it breaks, that's where I would start to get scared a little bit for Bitcoin. And my guess, if it ever does break, you kind of come down towards this 58 level right in here. You can see the trend line going back to the October 2023 lows through these lows. But really, when it all comes down to it, as long as it's not the digital gold, then you have to say to yourself, buy support, but if it breaks, stop out immediately. And then watch the stock market. And if the stock market has, if you were to tell me that in a year from now, the stock market's down 50%, I would think Bitcoin's below 50,000 at that point. That would be my personal thought. But again, that requires a big correction in the stock market.
So the underlying assumption is that into 2025, it's still going to trade like a leveraged NASDAQ play. That's what.
Yes, it will. It will. And you can understand why. I mean, if you think about it, is now that you have these ETFs, right? These ETFs have opened it up to a lot of retail investors that probably weren't buying Bitcoin as a risk or as just what Bitcoin is. And so they're investing because they're thinking they should diversify. It still means they get scared when we see the bigger markets drop. And so eventually you'll have enough institutional ownership and the word of what Bitcoin is will get out more and more, and people will start holding it as a risk-off asset. But I don't think we're there, and I think it's still years away, unfortunately.
Solana's token surged to $222, its highest in over 2 years, with strong indicators suggesting it could approach its all-time high of $260. Increased network activity and decentralized finance, DeFi growth are fueling optimism. Mara, a publicly traded, U.S.-based mining conglomerate listed on NASDAQ, has announced a new expansion of its Bitcoin mining sites in the country. 2 sites have already been acquired, and one is in development in Ohio, which will provide the company with 372 megawatts that will be fully energized by 2025. Dennis Porter, the co-founder of the Satoshi Action Fund, has recently revealed that several nations have contacted him to help establish a national Bitcoin reserve. He stated that hyper-Bitcoinization at a nation-state level is advancing faster than expected. The victory of President-elect Trump in the recent elections opens a path for a series of changes in the U.S. economy and current laws to achieve two objectives: improving the country's financial situation and providing a clear regulatory framework for crypto. Luckily, the path that Trump will begin to walk shares similarities with the Argentine and Salvadoran experiences in Latin America, featuring leaders who, like Trump, are part of a new cadre of politicians that think outside the box. The president has good relations with these leaders and has spoken with them personally, but the connections go deeper than that. Salvadoran President Nayib Bukele recently stated that he had a phone conversation with Trump after his victory, where several relevant topics were discussed, including a shared commitment to tackling the challenges ahead. While there were no reports about a crypto-related convo, Bukele might serve as a beacon for Trump to spearhead a crypto renaissance in the U.S., backed by one of the most pro-crypto Congresses elected to date, according to Coinbase CEO Brian Armstrong. Rumors swirl around the potential for nation-states to acquire large reserves of Bitcoin (BTC), sparking debates on the risks and benefits for the cryptocurrency's future. Russia, India, and several African nations are accelerating to dollarization, embracing national currencies in trade to enhance economic independence and reduce reliance on the U.S. dollar. With SEC Chair Gensler possibly stepping down, Ripple's high-stakes battle over XRP could see a swift resolution, signaling a shift in crypto regulation strategy. If you've been with us so far, a big thank you. Don't forget to subscribe for free to Bitcoin Zella for your daily news. The link is waiting below. That's all for today's crypto news. Stick around for more updates, insights, and analysis on cryptocurrencies. Share your thoughts in the comments, like this video, and subscribe for more exciting content.